Good morning, everyone. It is so great to be back in person with everyone. I've missed all the hugs, and it's been so great to catch up with so many old friends here. Welcome to the Stories of Inspiration in the MDF Community session. My name is Lisa Harvey-Duren, and I'm honored to have been the founding executive director of the Myotonic Dystrophy Foundation. I'm here to present the 4th annual Kayla Vidic Memorial Award for Outstanding Community Advocate. This award was created in honor of my late daughter, Kayla, to honor the advocates in this community. Many of you know my story, but for those that don't, my daughter, Kayla Vidic, was born in July of 2005, 8 weeks early and fighting for her life. At 46 days old, Kayla was diagnosed with congenital myotonic dystrophy with over 2,500 CTG repeats. After 105 days in the NICU, she came home with a trach, ventilator, a feeding tube, and a grim prognosis from her doctors. We lived day to day, battling the challenges that congenital DM threw her way, and there were so many. Kayla was my motivation in joining in on the efforts to help create the MDF. Together, we help families to connect and build this amazing community that we have today. My sweet, beautiful, funny girl taught me so much about life and is still teaching me today. I called Kayla my can-do girl. She never set out to be a DM warrior, and she never stopped and said, what limits am I going to break today? But Kayla just did it. She showed us what happens if you just give somebody a chance. Just by the virtue of who she was, she challenged narrow-minded notions about disability, human value, inclusion, and acceptance because she was constantly pushing the boundaries of possibility. She dismantled preconceived ideas about ability, often even surprising the experts. In Kayla's short journey, she made a huge impact. At 1 year old, Kayla joined me in media appearances where we started raising awareness about myotonic dystrophy. By the time she was 4, we shared her story on the National MDA Telethon, where she helped millions of people to understand the challenges that myotonic dystrophy creates in a family. Kayla's story continued to be told by numerous media outlets after that. And when she was 8 years old, we were invited to Washington, D.C. to testify in a congressional hearing for the MD Care Act, which was unanimously passed. Kayla also participated with our family for 6 years at the Stanford Medical School Roadshow, where we shared our family story with new medical students every year. And we've continued that in our family for the last 4 years, just sharing photos of Kayla. Also, Kayla participated in numerous research studies for many years. Unfortunately, Kayla's life was cut short in April of 2019 at almost 14 years old due to congenital complications of her heart related to DM. Kayla gave the ultimate gift to this community by donating her body to DM researchers who've continued to learn from her. To learn more about her journey, you can go to cureforkayla.com. I've had a blog since 3 days old, since she was 3 days old. Kayla's story is just one story in this community, and we all have stories to tell, and I encouraged you to tell anyone who will listen. Reach out and share your story and raise awareness for this disease, because we all need to do this together collectively to move us all towards treatments and a healthier life. For this year's award, we selected an incredibly deserving member of our community who's gone above and beyond to raise awareness for DM. This year, we selected Emily Jones from Rochester, New York. Emily, if you'll make your way up to the stage, I'll share a little bit about you. Thank you. Hello. You want to join me? I am tall. That's how people find me. Emily's family was diagnosed in 2014, and she attended her first MDF conference in 2015. She went home, and the first thing she did was start a support group with Rochester, which is the Finger Lakes Myotonic Dystrophy Support Group. Emily became a consumer reviewer for the DoD peer-reviewed medical research program on musculoskeletal diseases from the perspective of patients with myotonic dystrophy. In 2021, Emily led a meeting with her representative, Joe Morrell, and that included her entire support group. So she brought everyone there and also brought Charles Thornton so he could share the science. And she really made a huge impact and allowed them to really understand this disease at a deeper level by seeing so many people and hearing their stories. Emily was recently nominated to serve on the newly established MDF National Advocacy Committee, where she is actively involved now. Emily has been working with MDF advocates and support group facilitators to assist them in hosting similar meetings with their senators and representatives. Earlier this year, Emily co-led the first ever MDF advocacy grassroots webinar. And on top of all of those accomplishments, she also has been an amazing fundraiser to help raise money to continue raising awareness for this disease. It is my honor to award Emily Jones with the 4th annual Kayla Vidic Memorial Award for Outstanding Community Advocate. Thank you so much. We have a beautiful award. Thank you. Appreciate everything you've done. And we'll let Emily say a few words.
So, first of all, I want to thank you, Lisa, and the Myotonic Dystrophy Foundation. I am humbled, honored for this recognition. I also want to thank my dear wife. She supports me through all of the things that I do and more, and I am so thankful for all that she has done. She came into the marriage, and 2 years into the marriage, we found out my son was diagnosed with myotonic dystrophy. The marriage is still solid, and she's my rock. Lisa, as the founding director of the Myotonic Dystrophy Foundation, I thank you for your tenacity, your perseverance, and most importantly, for your vision. Your vision has brought us all together here today for this extraordinary conference. Without that, we wouldn't be where we are. Your vision has brought families, friends, physicians, pharmaceutical expertise, and extraordinary researchers to this conference. But now we are on the verge of finding a treatment, if not a cure. Thank you. But first and foremost, I'm a mother like you. As moms, we try to do everything for our kids to keep them from the pain and the isolation that this disease provides. We're desperate, truly desperate, to find a way to improve their lives. This award belongs to all of you caregivers and advocates in the room. Each of you begins the day worrying, hoping, helping to make each of your family members affected with this disease better. And you do it until there's no more gas in the tank. But yet you get up you give that young person or that loving spouse a hug. For those of you that are affected caregivers caring for others, I salute you. This is an extraordinary gift that you have given your family. This award belongs to all of you. You've earned it, you deserve it. You've made a difference one hug at a time. I'm proud to be a caregiver with all of you. Thank you.
So beautiful.
Mindy Kim reminded me a little while ago that I should have worn waterproof mascara. And so I'm so sorry. We are going to talk about myotonic dystrophy in motion. And so I want to first, before we sort of get into that, or as we get into it, introduce you to a phenomenal young man who we talked a little bit about yesterday. And he's going to tell you a little more about myotonic dystrophy in motion. So if I could have the next slide, please. So I want to share with you a little bit about Luke Bolt, and I'll keep it short. And there's a million things we could say about this wonderful young man, but he is from Washington State. He's this incredibly kind and thoughtful college student. He's an avid cyclist. He is a volunteer for MDF. He is a founding member of the movement committee. He has hosted fundraisers for MDF in both 2019 and 2022. And that was the Seattle to Portland bike ride that I mentioned yesterday. That's 206 miles that he is riding as a fundraiser, and it's 11 and a half hours on that bike. And he has raised between those two fundraisers almost $15,000 for myotonic dystrophy care and a cure.
Yes.
Luke and his entire family, the Bolt family, are incredibly passionate about raising awareness and inspiring the whole international DM community to get active. Next slide, please. Thank you. So Luke also happens to live with DM1, with a pacemaker, and lives with dysphagia. He came to us and said, how do we unify and inspire the global community to get moving, no matter where they are in the world? Not just the MDF folks engaged, but how do we do this for everyone? He wanted to survey the community, find out, are people interested in this? Can they get engaged? Will they get engaged? What would it take? So we did that, and he identified a name for an initiative. He helped design the logo that you see on the jersey that he's wearing and that you see on some of the flyers that have been out there and some of the other products that are available. He worked with his family to design the jerseys, and Dr. Bolt is wearing one right now, but it's the same one that Luke has on. You can also order them. You can check it out outside in the info table. But this was the spirit that he brought to MDF and asked for people to get involved and to make sure folks were inspired to start moving. So we're now asking everyone everywhere, whether you're cycling, running, walking, dancing, moving, yoga, please just start moving. And so with that, I would like to say, come on up, Luke, and tell us a little bit about the importance of myotonic dystrophy in motion.
Good morning, everybody. As Tanya said, my name is Luke. I'm Luke Bolt, and I'm a senior at George Fox University, which is in Newburgh, Oregon. I was hoping to get away from the Pacific Northwest weather and enjoy the sun a little bit, but it appears I've brought the weather with me, so my apologies for that. But I'd like to thank Dr. Stevenson and the whole of MDF for letting me speak for a few minutes, and I'd also like to thank my parents, Dr. Stephen and Jody Bolt, for their support over the last few years. So 7th grade is challenging enough for, I think most of us can agree with that. So your body's starting to change, your friend groups are changing, there's social cliques forming and you're dealing with the other myriad of everyday challenges of being a teenager. My 7th grade journey was a little bit more complicated than that. When I started noticing problems with my hands. So like if I grip something tightly, like my pencil, I would try to release and I kind of got stuck for 20 seconds or so. So that's myotonia. And I mentioned it to my mom one night in passing at dinner. She's, by pure coincidence, a pediatric neurologist. So yeah, she was noticing a few things as well, just with some bodily changes and a few differences from my peers. And just like that, with the blood test, I was diagnosed with DM1. So, and right after that diagnosis, everything sort of fell into place and made sense. My perpetual exhaustion, lack of strength, and lack of motivation in school or pretty much anything else, it all suddenly made sense. My diagnosis was far from expected. I was a year-round, I was active in year-round sports, both in and out of school, playing soccer, basketball, bowling, attempting to run, cycling, and which was my favorite sport. As I was, I was pushing myself in training and even competing in a race every now and then. My schedule grew a lot more complicated as I started visiting no less than 9 subspecialty clinics, often infringing upon the time I would rather spend being active. The summer following my diagnosis, an idea dawned that turned into my dream. What if I could fuse my love of physical activity and my desire to represent MDF with a movement-focused initiative within the DM community? So for most of my cycling career, I was part of a cycling team sponsored by our local bike shop, providing a sense of camaraderie, community, support, and encouragement during the associated training and racing. My goal was creating the same amount of community within MDF, focusing on mental and physical wellness that I've found that just movement and activity help with. However, I had a deeper motivation as well for starting this initiative. My symptoms were progressing pretty fast as my weakness in myotonia spread from my hands to my face, to my tongue, my neck, my trunk, my arms, and my legs, followed by sleep apnea and swallowing dysfunction. My cardiac conduction system was also developing some scary symptoms. And in the fall of 2020, in the depths of the COVID pandemic, and essentially as a 20th birthday present, I received a cardiac pacemaker implanted, which literally 2 days before my birthday. So that was fun. Anyway, in the process, my faith in God grew stronger, even as my body grew weaker, as I had to rely more on his strength than my own. And then in that process, more than ever, my goal of a movement initiative within MDF seemed more like a major mission and assignment for me on this earth. My idea lay dormant for a while until I finally shared it with my mom on a New Year's Eve walk. And she was really enthusiastic and receptive and supported me in it. And my dream started coming to life as we began discussions with MDF team leaders about my idea. And over a year of meeting, planning, strategizing, and designing evolved into what we now call myotonic dystrophy in motion. You may have read about it somewhat in the dispatch or seen it on social media, and you've probably heard about it now too, I hope. So yeah, if you haven't really heard as much about it, our main overarching theme is promoting physical activity and movement in the DM community with the goal of cohesiveness, improving physical and mental wellness, and raising awareness of DM with some branded exercise clothing and other items like water bottles. I think there's a few other things. But everybody in the community, from those affected to caregivers to friends, family, and beyond, should feel like a team moving together despite myotonic dystrophy. And this past July, I fulfilled 2 of my dreams simultaneously, riding for the first time in a myotonic dystrophy in motion cycling shirt while completing a single day 206-mile Seattle to Portland ride with my mom. We also did a quick fundraiser, raising a decent sum of money for myotonic dystrophy research. So I'm pretty proud of how far we've come in such a short time, but yeah, this is only the beginning, I think. So I would invite you to join our movement, and I can't wait to see where we go next. Thank you.
So we have a special award that we would like to give to Luke. It is the Above and Beyond Award. And I'll show this to you. It's kind of hard to see. We can take it out. But and we just would like to thank you, Luke, for taking the initiative. You're already a college student and doing so much for so many other people and volunteering. We're so grateful for everything you've done to inspire the community, to inspire MDF, and to help move this initiative forward. And you really did go above and beyond, and we're grateful. So thank you. Well, okay.
Good morning. I'm Larry Lord, DM caregiver. Soon after the birth of our first son, Hunter, in 1976, my late wife, Shannon, and I were perplexed over the fact that Hunter did not crawl like other children his age. He would pull himself on his belly across the floor like a Marine. He continued to display a lack of development as we went along, and we started searching for what was wrong. After 8 years of searching, a pediatric neurologist in Atlanta diagnosed Hunter with myotonic dystrophy. And interestingly, after 8 years, he did it in 5 minutes. In that myotonic dystrophy is autosomal dominant. In other words, it comes through the family. Shannon and I were tested to determine the carrier. Shannon assumed the carrier would prove to be me. But after all the tests were done, the results of the EMG test that was done at that time, that Shannon, although you would not have guessed it, was the carrier. With that revelation, Shannon went into her research mode to discover who were the leaders in the field of medicine researching myotonic dystrophy. Her search revealed names like Harper, Thornton, Day, Ashizawa. She learned that the definitive book on myotonic dystrophy was written by Dr. Peter Harper from the University of Cardiff in Wales. She later learned he was giving a lecture at the University of Alabama, Birmingham School of Medicine, a 2-hour drive from our home. So she signed up immediately since she was eager to pick his brain about myotonic dystrophy. She signed up and attended, and she told Dr. Harper that she was interested in learning everything she could about the disease, but she also was raising money to support research. And she asked to whom she should direct the funds that she was raising. He quickly and emphatically suggested Dr. Tetsuo Ashizawa at the Baylor College of Medicine in Houston was the most worthy recipient. She immediately got in touch. That began a lifelong relationship with Dr. T, enjoying regular encounters at national and international meetings and conferences, and exchanging phone calls and emails for many years to come. Interestingly, T set up the recipient fund and named it the Hunter Fund after our son, and the Mdf Hunter Fund still exists today that we try to continue to raise money for. Our first face-to-face encounter with T was at the annual meeting of the American Society of Human Genetics in year 2000 in Philadelphia. T organized a dinner for us to meet some of the myotonic dystrophy researchers. The meeting focused on a brief scientific presentations of their latest data. At the end, Shannon introduced me, herself, and our two sons, Hunter and Ashby, who were in their early 20s at the time. She then presented T with a check for $155,000 for research. T later pointed out the amazing fact that most scientists who attended that session had never met anybody with myotonic dystrophy. And they were there seeking to find answers to this difficult disease. After the meeting, T invited Shannon to come to Houston to further discuss with him and some of his colleagues her expectations about the use of the initial funds and those that she continued to raise. During that discussion, he introduced the idea that she might want to share her view of the disease at the next International Myotonic Dystrophy Consortium, IDMC3, meeting in Kyoto, Japan, scheduled for the fall of 2021. He convinced her to address the attendees on the effects of the disease. Although uncertain, she accepted. Shannon arrived in Kyoto and was shocked to learn that her address would be the keynote speech at the opening ceremony. T reported that Shannon gave an articulate and compassionate speech. Shannon then became an ongoing spokesperson and friend to many in the international community of those working on and focusing on myotonic dystrophy. At the next consortium meeting in Glasgow, Darren's hometown, in 2003, T introduced Shannon to Margaret Bowler. And Margaret is the founder of the Myotonic Dystrophy Support Group in the United Kingdom. Margaret taught Shannon the importance of support groups and how to organize them. That led to the consortium meeting in Quebec City, Canada in 2005, where T helped Shannon organize a dinner for more than 30 people, including 6 American physicians. After the dinner, Jeremy Kelly, John Brecka, and Barry Walls joined with Shannon to create the Myotonic Dystrophy Foundation. Shannon became the inaugural chair of the MDF in 2006, which is now the world's largest patient organization focused solely on myotonic dystrophy. In early 2013, Shannon was diagnosed with cancer. It became evident that she would not survive, and she moved into palliative care. T is compassionate for every person, especially those with myotonic dystrophy, but had a special kindred spirit with Shannon. As an honor to her, T traveled to Atlanta to spend a day with her during the last week. Then he also arranged for her body to be used at the University of Florida to continue in the research pursuit, which they still do today. It's amazing how the seemingly quiet T. Ashizawa has had a loud and profound effect, not only on research, but on the development of the Myotonic Dystrophy Foundation. He has been a huge presence, encouraging the pursuit of answers to respond to our disease. T is a giant example of humankind.
Morning, everybody. Thanks, Larry, for that. And thanks to the MDF for giving me the opportunity to also say a few words about my dear friend and colleague, T. Ashizawa. It really is a great honor to be able to say a few words about T. So I first met T when I arrived in Houston as a bright-eyed young postdoc in 1993. And for those of you already doing the maths, just to point out, I was a child prodigy. I was only 12 years old at the time. And those of you who knew T in those days will also note that he probably didn't look much older than me then either. And again, those of you who are familiar with T over the years will be will have noted his remarkable youthfulness and will be as amazed as I am that he's really approaching the age now where he's thinking of retiring. So T, as I said, I met him when I arrived in Houston. I was starting a postdoc with Tom Caskey at Baylor College of Medicine. And at the time, Tom Caskey was one of the foremost leaders of human genetics in the world. And it was really a great honor for me to be able to work in his lab and to learn a lot of great human genetics from Tom. But actually, probably the single most important thing that Tom did was introduce me to T. Ashizawa, who very fortunately for me, T was doing a sabbatical in Tom's lab at that time. And really everything I knew about myotonic dystrophy, or I knew nothing about myotonic dystrophy at the time, T taught me everything I knew about myotonic dystrophy, including introducing me to patients and getting me some of the DNA samples that would allow me to get my research career on myotonic dystrophy up and running. So really big thank you for T for doing that. And again, another important thing that T did wasn't just provide me with these samples, but he did a tremendous job in introducing me to everyone at Baylor and in the Texas Medical Center who was working on myotonic dystrophy and other related disorders. And T was really instrumental in bringing that group of researchers together at a very exciting time in human genetics. And he, along with Bob Wells, formed the Triplet Repeat Club, which was a group of researchers working on these apparently different disorders, sharing ideas, and ways forward, and out of that essentially evolved into what eventually became the unstable microsatellites and DNA disorder, a series of meetings that Laura Ranum has been running for the last 10, 15 years or so and are still going, a lasting legacy of that original small meeting that T organized with Bob Wells in Houston. Shortly after that, I went to my first Muscular Dystrophy Association meeting, and again, T there did a tremendous job dragging me around, introducing me to all of the big players in the myotonic dystrophy field, and really helped me to integrate into that community, not least of which he introduced me to Keith Johnson, who was then working at the University of Glasgow. As Larry alluded to, it was Keith then that recruited me to Glasgow. So again, that was directly from an introduction from T. So that was, again, another fantastic way that T had helped me. As Larry also mentioned, T organized these ancillary meetings at the American Society of Human Genetics, where, again, we got to discuss myotonic dystrophy genetics. And again, I got to meet more of the people involved in the community, as well as taking me to various salubrious bars and things. We had a great time at those meetings. And T was instrumental in introducing me, but other young investigators as well. Christopher Pearson, again, was kind of around about at the same time. And as Charles noted yesterday, Charles came into this community because it's so friendly, and T really is the epitome of that. No one can see T's smiling face and get a whiff of his infectious enthusiasm for research and not be attracted to work in this community. So again, that friendliness is really, again, a big thanks to T. Again, his spirit of collaboration and wanting to share ideas and the way forward, again, was instrumental in his involvement in establishing the International Myotonic Dystrophy Consortium. And he, along with Geneviève Gordon and later Maurice Swanson, were instrumental in organizing these international meetings, again, that Larry alluded to. First one in Paris, then in North Carolina, then in Japan, and on from there. And we're now at IDMC 13 that happened earlier in the summer in Japan. And again, as far as I'm aware, T is the only person who was physically attended at all 13 of those meetings. So whatever else we're doing today, I think, again, we should get him a medal just for having been to all of those 13 meetings. So again, those meetings were really driven by T in bringing the community together and sharing ideas, etc. So when I first met T back in 1993, he was obviously in the lab doing research, very much interested in the CTG repeats. And in fact, he had already been involved with Tom Caskey and others in identifying the CTG mutation that causes myotonic dystrophy. And a lot of work that T did in those days was understanding how the repeat changed from one generation to the next. And again, the way he studied that was getting a big international team of collaborators to all share their data. And again, what he found from that again, the number of repeats growing from one generation to the next explained why the disease got more severe from one generation to the next. but it wasn't always that simple. Sometimes the repeat got smaller, and sometimes that made the disease worse, and sometimes it didn't. And again, so it became clear that it was a bit more complicated than just you've got this many repeats, you will have this form of the disease. And from that kind of knowledge that wasn't quite as simple as maybe had first been thought, T organized at one of the International Myotonic Dystrophy Consortium meetings that we should all agree a stance on what was the best way to do the genetic testing and what way that should be reported back to patients and families. So that on the back of that, we actually published the first international guidelines for how genetic testing should be done in myotonic dystrophy. And as far as I'm aware, those were the first internationally agreed guidelines of any sort for myotonic dystrophy. And again, that was entirely led by T's contribution. So I'd like to tell you much more about the great science that T has done over the years. Again, you also looked at how the repeat changed throughout the lifetime of the individual, lots more recent work on gene editing and really trying to develop therapies for this disorder. Unfortunately, I don't have time to tell you all about that, but just really to highlight again that T has been instrumental in driving the research, but also the management of the disorder. And again, it's no coincidence that the first set of internationally agreed guidelines for management of adults, clinical management of adults with myotonic dystrophy, again, has T. Ashizawa as the first author on that paper, again, illustrating his critical role in bringing the field together and leading these types of international collaborations. T has, again, when I first met him was in Baylor. He moved shortly thereafter to Galveston, University of Texas, and from there on to Gainesville in Florida. And then a few years ago, again, back to Methodist at Houston. And everywhere he's been leading departments where he's, again, driven both the clinical management of myotonic dystrophy and also, importantly, bringing up and promoting the young researchers in his empire and really promoting them and allowing them to take things forward. So again, really driving collaboration and the development of the younger people in the community. As Larry has also alluded to, again, really instrumental in bringing the patients and families into the science side of things as well and making this really one big family. T has done a fantastic and tremendous job there. And again, instrumental in establishing the group of people that then went on to develop the MDF. And not surprisingly, when the MDF then started receiving money for research and thinking about how that should be spent, T was recruited as one of the founding members of the Scientific Advisory Committee, directing how that money would be best spent. And again, throughout that period, T has been instrumental in driving us to give as much of that money as possible to the up and coming young investigators as the future of research in this area. So it's kind of unfortunate that the purpose of today is to thank T for all of the work that he's done towards the Scientific Advisory Committee, which he's from now retiring from, and recognize that contribution and all the tremendous contributions that T has made over the last 30 or years or so towards the entire myotonic dystrophy community, and really been the key driver of bringing people together from so many different parts of the community. So T, if you would like to join us on the stage, that would be fantastic.
Oh, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Just like being from Houston, you're the propellant for everything that's been good about this whole process.
We just have only a few words, and I'm so humbled and honored. And it is quite amazing that my career, I'm not the really top-notch scientist. I mean, I did some work, but there are many more excellent scientists in the field now. And also there are better clinicians in Europe, Japan, and the United States. And I've seen many of you as my patients as well as my colleagues. And I encountered some sad situation like a Kayla and, other kids and other patients. And so this one I would like to share with those people who are suffering from myotonic dystrophy. But I'm quite amazed at listening to Larry and Darren. Gee, they are really great speechwriter because because it sounded like I'm a superstar. So I am going to hire them anytime for the occasion of the speech. But anyway, I'm planning to come back to MDF and the IDMC in the future. Even if I don't do any research anymore, still I can probably contribute to some extent. So if I see you then, now you know me. So my true name is Tetsuo, but everybody calls me T, except my mother when she was alive. When she was really mad at me, she called me Tetsuo. So please call me T. And the origin of the name was when I was an intern in Pittsburgh, one hospital. I was in ICU rotation, and they shouted. At that time, there was no really handy cell phone or anything like that. They tried to call me Tetsuo, shouted at me, but it came out totally different names. So one nurse came up with the abbreviation T. I put EE after that, so that stuck as my nickname. So please remember me as T, and you call me T, you don't need to say Dr. T. So I'm your friend, I'm your supporter, and we talk about myotonic dystrophy and towards a cure and a better world. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Can we give one more round of applause for all three award winners, Emily and Luke and T? Is that fantastic? Those really are stories of inspiration. That concludes the program today. We have a very busy schedule and we are running almost on time. So please enjoy the rest of the day and we'll see you all back here very soon. Thank you.